What are the odds that a 66-year-old decorated Marine sniper would be falsely accused of terrorism by drunk college students? What are the odds those same accusers would confess they lied? And what are the odds classified military documents would surface proving he's actually a Medal of Honor recipient? This is that 1 in a billion story. This man saved 37 American soldiers in Vietnam and killed 43 enemy fighters in a single day. 50 years later, 3 drunk teenagers destroyed his life with one phone call. But when a retired general stepped off a helicopter with top-secret documents, everything changed forever. Before we continue this incredible story, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories reach the people who need to hear them. 6:15 a.m. Eddie's Diner, Baltimore. The man in booth 7 has been coming here every morning for 10 years. Same black coffee, same newspaper, same purple heart pinned to his jacket that nobody ever notices. His name is Daniel Rigg. In exactly 23 minutes, he'll be in handcuffs. Watch this security footage from that morning. You see those 3 college kids stumbling through the door? Tyler Morrison, Jake Sullivan, Brett Collins, drunk, high, looking for trouble. They have absolutely no idea they just walked up to a man who single-handedly held off an entire Vietnamese army company for 6 hours straight. "Look at this old black guy taking up space," Tyler announces loud enough for everyone to hear. Probably been nursing that 1 cup of coffee all night. Daniel doesn't even look up from his newspaper. After 3 tours in Vietnam, drunk teenagers aren't exactly a threat. But watch his body language. Notice how his shoulders tense slightly? That's combat instinct. "I bet he's one of those welfare cases," Jake adds. "My dad says they hang out here because they got nowhere else to go." For 8 minutes, they keep hurling insults. 8 minutes of pure racism directed at a man whose military file contains the words, "extraordinary heroism under fire," and "saved 37 American lives." But here's what's about to happen that will absolutely blow your mind. Daniel finally speaks. And I want you to listen to these exact words because they are about to send him to prison for 18 months. "Gentlemen, I'm not looking for trouble. Perhaps you could keep your voices down so everyone can enjoy their breakfast." That's it. That's the entire threat. A polite request to lower their voices. Tyler's response? He stands up, face red with rage. Did this threatening old black guy just try to intimidate us? And here's where it gets absolutely insane. Brett pulls out his phone and starts recording. But what he records isn't what actually happened. "He's threatening us!" Brett shouts at his camera. "This crazy old man is threatening innocent people." Meanwhile, Daniel is sitting calmly with his hands visible on the table, not moving, not speaking. But Tyler's already dialing 911. Listen to this actual audio from the call. "Help. There's a dangerous black man at Murphy's Diner threatening to hurt us. He looks like he might have weapons. Please hurry." None of that is true, not one word. 4 minutes later, 3 police cruisers screech into the parking lot. Officers burst through the door with their hands on their weapons. They scan the room, see 3 white college students pointing at 1 black man, and their minds are made up before they even ask a question. "That's him," Tyler points dramatically. "He threatened to hurt us, said he knew ways to make people disappear." Daniel never said anything remotely close to that. But watch what happens next. Officer Patterson approaches Daniel's table. "Stand up slowly and put your hands behind your back." "Officer, there seems to be a misunderstanding," Daniel begins. "I simply asked these young men to lower their voices." "Save it for the judge," Patterson snaps. The handcuffs click shut. As they lead Daniel toward the police car, his Marine Corps cap falls to the floor next to his newspaper. The headline visible on the open page reads, "Local Veterans Honored for Service." The bitter irony is lost on no one except the officers arresting him. But here's what makes this story absolutely explosive. Those 3 college students had no idea they just destroyed the life of one of America's greatest unsung war heroes. They didn't know that buried in classified Pentagon files was evidence that Daniel Rigg had been recommended for the Congressional Medal of Honor. and they definitely didn't know that a retired three-star general named Samuel Wyatt had been searching for Daniel for 40 years to right a terrible wrong. Because what you're about to discover about Firebase Alpha in Vietnam, about 43 enemy soldiers killed in one day, about racist Pentagon officials who buried a black soldier's heroism, and about the classified documents that would eventually free Daniel from prison, it's going to change everything you think you know about justice in America. The media narrative was established before Daniel even saw a lawyer. Channel 8 led their evening broadcast with "Veteran Threatens Teens at Downtown Diner," showing Daniel's mugshot alongside smiling school photos of Tyler, Jake, and Brett. The story portrayed the accusers as innocent victims and Daniel as a dangerous black veteran who had terrorized white college students. Daniel's court-appointed attorney, Jennifer Walsh, was a recent law school graduate handling over 100 active cases. She had approximately 40 minutes to review Daniel's file before their first meeting in the county jail interview room. "Mr. Rigg, the state has 3 witnesses who say you threatened them with violence," she began, already sounding defeated. "That's going to be difficult to overcome." What Walsh didn't know was that District Attorney Rebecca Carlisle was using Daniel's case as the centerpiece of her mayoral campaign. Trailing in polls by 8 points, she saw a high-profile conviction of a dangerous veteran as her path to victory. The preliminary hearing revealed the first major obstacles. Judge Robert Morrison ruled that Daniel's military records were inadmissible, eliminating any evidence of his Silver Star, Purple Heart, and commendations for valor. The jury would never learn that this supposed threat to society had actually saved American lives in combat. Jury selection proved devastating. The final jury consisted of 10 white jurors, 1 Hispanic woman, and 1 black man. During jury selection, several potential jurors had openly expressed skepticism about veterans, particularly Vietnam veterans. "Those guys came back messed up," one dismissed juror had said. "You never know what might set them off." District Attorney Carlisle's strategy became clear during her opening statement. She painted Daniel not as a decorated veteran, but as a dangerous predator who had used his military training to terrorize innocent young men. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carlisle began, making eye contact with each juror, "we are here because the defendant, a man trained in violence and killing, chose to threaten 3 young men whose only crime was enjoying a meal at a local restaurant." Her first witness was Dr. Marcus Webb, a criminologist who had never met Daniel but claimed expertise in late-onset veteran violence. "Veterans who served in combat zones like Vietnam carry what we call trained lethality," Webb testified. "Unlike civilian criminals who might threaten violence they can't carry out, these individuals possess the skills and psychological conditioning to follow through." The prosecution built their case systematically over 3 days. Tyler Morrison took the stand first, his testimony polished through hours of preparation. "He looked at us with these cold, calculating eyes," Tyler said, dabbing at crocodile tears. "It was like he was deciding the best way to hurt us. Then he said, and I'll never forget these words, 'Young men like you need to learn respect, and I know ways to teach it that you'll never forget.'" Daniel had never said anything remotely similar, but Tyler delivered the fabricated quote with such conviction that jurors visibly recoiled. Jake Sullivan and Brett Collins followed with supporting testimony that corroborated Tyler's lies. Their stories had been rehearsed to eliminate contradictions from their initial police statements. "The defendant kept talking about his military training," Jake testified. "He said he'd been in situations where he had to make people disappear and that local police couldn't protect us if he decided we needed to be taught a lesson." Officer Patterson embellished his police report significantly during testimony. "When we arrived, the defendant was agitated and belligerent," Patterson lied. "He kept mentioning his military service and making veiled references to his combat experience." The prosecution's masterstroke came when Carlisle called Dr. Patricia Hendricks, a psychiatrist who claimed expertise in veteran-related violence despite never treating Daniel. Vietnam veterans often experience delayed-onset aggressive episodes, triggered by perceived disrespect from younger generations, Dr. Hendricks explained. The defendant's military service, particularly as a sniper, would have conditioned him to respond to threats with calculated violence. Jennifer Walsh's defense was hampered by systematic disadvantages that plague public defenders across America. Too many cases, too little time and resources stretched impossibly thin. Her opening statement lacked the confident authority of the prosecution's presentation. "My client is not the dangerous predator the prosecution wants you to believe," Walsh began weakly. "He's a 66-year-old retired teacher who simply asked some disruptive teenagers to lower their voices." Judge Morrison's ruling that Daniel's military records were inadmissible eliminated Walsh's ability to present evidence of his Silver Star, Purple Heart, and commendations that might have countered the prosecution's portrayal. Walsh attempted to present character witnesses, but Judge Morrison limited her to just two. Dr. Margaret Chen, Daniel's former department head at the community college, testified that he had been beloved by students and respected by faculty. But Carlisle's cross-examination quickly turned Dr. Chen's testimony against Daniel. "Dr. Chen, were you aware that Professor Rigg frequently discussed violence in his classes? He taught about historical violence, the Civil War, both World Wars, Vietnam. So he regularly talked about killing and violence with impressionable young people." The damage was done. Carlisle had managed to make Daniel's excellent teaching record sound like evidence of violent obsession. Maria Rodriguez, the waitress who witnessed the actual incident, should have been devastating to the prosecution's case, but Carlisle's cross-examination revealed that Maria was an undocumented immigrant who might lie to avoid deportation. The jury's trust in her testimony evaporated. The jury deliberated for exactly 1 hour and 47 minutes, barely enough time to elect a foreman and fill out verdict forms. Such quick deliberation almost always meant conviction. "On the charge of terroristic threatening in the second degree, how do you find?" "We find the defendant, Daniel Rigg, guilty." The word hit Daniel like a physical blow, but he maintained his military posture. Behind him, his daughter Michelle gasped while Tyler Morrison's mother smiled with satisfaction. "On the charge of disturbing the peace, how do you find?" "We find the defendant guilty." Daniel's spotless 66-year record of citizenship was destroyed by lies told under oath. The media portrayed the verdict as a victory for community safety, warning other veterans about the consequences of using military training to intimidate civilians. At sentencing, Tyler Morrison delivered another Oscar-worthy performance. "Your Honor, what Daniel Rigg did to us has changed our lives forever," Tyler began with manufactured emotion. "I used to love going out with friends. Now I'm afraid some unstable veteran might decide I deserve to be taught a lesson." Judge Morrison's sentence reflected political pressure rather than justice. "Mr. Rigg, while I acknowledge your military service, that service does not excuse your conduct. The court sentences you to 5 years imprisonment with possibility of parole after serving 60%. The sentence was harsh, even by local standards, but Daniel had become a symbol rather than an individual. His punishment was designed to send a message about challenging white privilege while black. Pendleton Correctional Facility's intake process was designed to strip away dignity and individuality. Daniel endured the humiliation with stoic discipline, but the psychological impact was devastating for a man who'd spent his life serving others. His cellmate was Marcus Williams, a 24-year-old serving 8 years for armed robbery. When Marcus learned about Daniel's military service, the entire dynamic changed. "Vietnam? My uncle was over there, said it was hell on earth." "It was," Daniel confirmed. "But we did our duty and came home to build something better." Word of Daniel's service spread quickly through the prison population. Even hardened criminals treated the 66-year-old history teacher with respect. "That old man in D Block fought in Vietnam," inmates would whisper, "killed communists for his country, then taught kids about freedom. Don't mess with him." Letters began arriving from veterans across America who'd heard about his case. The American Legion, veterans of foreign wars, and other military organizations sent support and expressed outrage at his treatment. "Brother, we got your 6, wrote one Marine veteran from California. "What they did to you is an insult to every person who ever wore the uniform." Meanwhile, investigative journalist Patricia Santos of the Indianapolis Star was uncovering troubling inconsistencies in the prosecution's case. Her investigation revealed that Tyler Morrison had been arrested twice for underage drinking, Jake Sullivan had been suspended for academic dishonesty, and Brett Collins had a sealed juvenile record for assault. These weren't innocent college students traumatized by a dangerous veteran. They were privileged young men with histories of lying to authority figures whose word was taken over a decorated war hero's simply because of skin color. 8 months into Daniel's sentence, his daughter Michelle received a phone call that would change everything. She was working a double shift at Northwestern Memorial Hospital when her phone rang with a Washington, D.C. area code. "Is this Michelle Rigg, daughter of Daniel Rigg?" "Yes, who is this?" "My name is General Samuel Wyatt, United States Army, retired. I've been searching for your father for over 40 years. General Wyatt explained that he'd been a young lieutenant when his reconnaissance patrol was ambushed by North Vietnamese forces near the Cambodian border. For 6 hours, Daniel had held off an entire enemy company with precision sniper fire, allowing helicopters to evacuate wounded while calling in artillery strikes. Your father was recommended for the Congressional Medal of Honor, General Wyatt continued, but the paperwork got lost in the war's chaos, and racial prejudice in the military bureaucracy ensured his heroism was never recognized. I've carried that guilt for 50 years. Can you help him? I'm flying to Indianapolis tonight. I've classified documents that were declassified last year, military records proving your father is one of the greatest heroes of the Vietnam War. General Wyatt's helicopter touched down on the courthouse parking lot at 6:47 a.m., carrying briefcases containing classified documents that would expose one of the most shameful cover-ups in modern military history. The three-star general emerged wearing his dress uniform with ribbons representing 4 decades of distinguished service. Behind him walked Colonel Patricia Davis and Major James Rodriguez, who had helped piece together the true story of what happened near Firebase Alpha in 1973. I am here to present evidence that will prove Daniel Rigg is not only innocent of these charges, but is one of the greatest heroes in American military service history, General Wyatt announced to assembled reporters. Emergency hearings were convened as word spread about new evidence. Judge Morrison, facing intense political pressure, agreed to an immediate evidentiary hearing. General Wyatt's testimony began with Operation Silent Thunder, a classified reconnaissance mission on March 26, 1973. Lieutenant Wyatt's patrol had walked into a carefully planned ambush. "We were pinned down by an entire enemy company," General Wyatt testified. 3 men were dead, the rest wounded. We had no chance unless someone provided covering fire for helicopter evacuation. That someone was Marine Corporal Daniel Rigg, positioned 800 meters away with his sniper rifle. For 6 hours, while enemy forces tried to overrun us, Daniel systematically eliminated machine gun positions, mortar crews, and squad leaders. Corporal Rigg killed 43 enemy soldiers that day, but more importantly, his accurate fire saved 37 American lives, including mine. The classified documents revealed that Daniel's commanding officer had recommended him for the Congressional Medal of Honor, but the recommendation was rejected not because his actions didn't merit the honor, but because of institutional racism. One Pentagon memo stated that Negro soldiers should not be awarded the nation's highest honor, as it sends the wrong message about military leadership. Daniel's heroism had been deliberately suppressed because military officials believed recognizing a black soldier's extraordinary valor would threaten white supremacy in the armed forces. Under pressure from renewed FBI investigation, Tyler Morrison, Jake Sullivan, and Brett Collins finally admitted they had lied under oath. "We made it all up," Tyler confessed in a video statement. "Mr. Rigg never threatened us. He just asked us to be quieter, and we got mad because we were drunk and thought he was being disrespectful. We figured no one would believe an old black man over 3 white college students." The confession was devastating for its casual racism and privileged assumption that the justice system would automatically side with white accusers over a black defendant. By evening, Crowds gathered outside Pendleton Correctional Facility, demanding Daniel's immediate release. Veterans groups organized motorcycle convoys, stretching for miles along Interstate 70. Emergency motions were filed in state and federal courts. The weight of public opinion, political pressure, and undeniable evidence was finally breaking down the wall of lies. Judge Morrison had no choice but to dismiss all charges with prejudice. "Mr. Rigg," the judge said as Daniel stood in his orange prison uniform, "this court finds that your conviction was based on perjured testimony. All charges are hereby dismissed." When Daniel walked through the prison gates at 2:37 p.m., he was greeted by over 5,000 supporters, including hundreds of veterans who had driven from across the Midwest. The first person to reach him was his daughter Michelle. Their embrace, captured by cameras and broadcast live nationwide, became an iconic image of justice delayed but not denied. General Wyatt was second to greet Daniel. "Corporal Rigg," the general said, using Daniel's old military rank, "I owe you an apology that's 50 years overdue." "General," Daniel replied with quiet dignity, "we both served our country to the best of our ability. That's all any soldier can do." 6 months after his release, Daniel was invited to Washington, D.C. for a ceremony that should have taken place 50 years earlier. In the White House Rose Garden, President Williams presented him with the Congressional Medal of Honor. "Corporal Daniel Rigg represents the best of America," the president said as he placed the blue ribbon around Daniel's neck. "His heroism in Vietnam saved 37 American lives, and his dignity in facing injustice has reminded us that courage takes many forms." The ceremony was attended by surviving members of General Wyatt's patrol, elderly men who had traveled from across the country to finally thank their rescuer. Daniel's congressional testimony before the House Judiciary Committee became a watershed moment in criminal justice reform discussions. "What happened to me was not an aberration," Daniel told the packed hearing room. "It was the predictable result of a system that values privileged white accusers' words over truth and sees military service by black veterans as evidence of dangerousness rather than patriotism." His testimony helped pass the Veterans Justice Act, mandating special training for prosecutors and judges, handling veterans' cases, and creating federal oversight of jurisdictions with discriminatory prosecution patterns. District Attorney Rebecca Carlisle's career ended abruptly when she withdrew from the mayoral race 3 days after Daniel's release. Federal investigators opened civil rights investigations into her office's conduct. Officers Patterson and Walsh were fired and faced federal charges for violating Daniel's civil rights. Tyler Morrison, Jake Sullivan, and Brett Collins were charged with perjury and conspiracy, receiving 18-month prison sentences. Daniel's civil lawsuit resulted in a $15.7 million settlement, one of the largest wrongful conviction awards in Indiana history. He donated most of the money to establish the Daniel Rigg Foundation for wrongfully convicted veterans. 1 year after his release, Daniel returned to Murphy's Diner for the first time since his arrest. The booth where he'd been reading his newspaper now bore a bronze plaque reading, "In honor of Medal of Honor, recipient Daniel Rigg, American hero." As Daniel sat drinking the same black coffee, young people approached asking for photos and expressing gratitude for his service. A group of black teenagers told him his story had inspired them to pursue careers in law and criminal justice. "Mr. Rigg," one said, "you showed us that even when the whole system is against you, truth can still win if you don't give up." Daniel smiled, remembering the scared young Marines he'd led through Vietnam jungles 50 years earlier. "Truth always wins eventually," he replied. "Sometimes it just takes longer than we'd like." Daniel Rigg's story reveals profound truths about justice, courage, and America's ongoing struggle with equality. His experience demonstrates that military service and decades of honorable citizenship offer no protection against racial bias when the system chooses to believe lies over truth. The most powerful lesson is that individual dignity can survive even systematic attempts at destruction. Daniel maintained his honor throughout 18 months of imprisonment, refusing to confess to crimes he never committed. His unwavering commitment to truth ultimately led to vindication and justice. This case illustrates the critical importance of investigative journalism and advocacy in exposing wrongful convictions. Without Patricia Santos's reporting and General Wyatt's intervention, Daniel might have served his entire sentence while truth remained buried in Pentagon files. Perhaps most significantly, Daniel's story shows that redemption is possible even after devastating injustice. His decision to establish a foundation helping other wrongfully convicted veterans transforms personal suffering into systemic change. Heroes are defined not by their inability to be knocked down, but by their refusal to stay down. True justice requires constant vigilance from citizens willing to demand accountability and protect the innocent. What strikes you most about Daniel's incredible journey from decorated war hero to wrongfully convicted prisoner to Medal of Honor recipient? Have you or someone you know ever faced injustice because of racial bias? Share your thoughts about how we can better protect veterans and minorities from false accusations in our justice system. Remember, stay strong and keep fighting for what's right.